So thanks everyone for joining us. I'm Anthony Fortner, data engineer, and next door to me we have Lee Markum. Oh, I got to point this way. Lee Markum, database extraordinaire.
Hello.
There's administrator. I'm sorry, I skipped the administrator part. So first of all, you've been adventuring with cloud services, right? As a DBA, you definitely have extensive vocabulary, a lot of experience when it comes to on-prem, and you've spent, I'm not sure how long. Actually, how long have you been working with cloud databases now? Would you say heavily, not the research, like pretty heavily?
Yeah, year and a half. So May of 2021, I took a job that was completely cloud. So I made
100%. Yeah,
complete
heavily.
Change.
Cool. Okay. So early days, how was that experience? Like switching from very on-prem to 100% cloud. How was that experience?
It was kind of rough. It wasn't exactly what I expected. It had nothing to do with my employer or any of the people that I worked with. That part was fine. I could have had this experience anywhere. I think just moving from on-prem to cloud is just different. You're used to breathing underwater, and now you come up onto the land and you can breathe, but it's different. It's not quite the same experience.
Working on land, going to a ship, you don't have your sea legs yet.
Yeah. Lots of new concepts, lots of things that in my head I kind of knew, but I hadn't lived it yet. I hadn't experienced it in my everyday job. And now I am. And it took some getting used to, for sure.
Okay, so you're in the cloud. Most of your cloud experience is either in Azure or AWS, right?
Yeah, it's almost completely AWS. I have some exposure to Azure, but not nearly as much, and not at this job really at all yet. Although we do have some Azure customers at this point. But
okay, there's a splattering in there. Okay, early days, was there a bias towards one or the other? Was it benefits to one or the other? And did that change as you got more experience in AWS?
So I've had a tendency toward Microsoft Azure. I think a lot of the concepts translate, but it's been interesting for sure.
Okay. Coke or Pepsi?
Pepsi, 100%.
Oh, scoff. I like them both. I'm just kidding.
Pepsi challenge. Pepsi challenge.
That's the next episode. Okay, so you had a bias because you tend to use Microsoft products. I mean, that makes sense because your specialty is SQL Server, right? So
yes.
that makes a lot of sense. And then you learned something. You learned Azure. You did a lot of research into that. You worked with it a little bit, but here 100% AWS. So, I guess so things didn't really change much. You've been working at AWS for a while, and you're kind of comfortable with that. So is there a big difference in the workflow for DBA between, like you said, 100% on-prem versus now 100% in the cloud?
Yes. Yes, there is. So the biggest challenge and the biggest difference for me in terms of workflow has been, interestingly enough, around storage. I never was a big storage guy in terms of knowing a ton of details, but storage is and the storage options are incredibly important in the cloud. And I kind of knew that, but again, as I mentioned, it's different from knowing it up here and then living it every day when you sign into your day job. That's been a big factor. Certain processes for a SQL Server are heavily dependent on storage. And if you don't pick the right kind of storage, then you don't have the IOPS, you don't have the read and write ability that you need. If you don't have the throughput, then that's another problem. And then you have to get those two things aligned perfectly for your workload. And
Yeah.
I didn't have to think about in the past. I didn't have to think about backups and the reads and writes involved in backups as part of my workload, because I was just on blazing fast storage, and I could take a backup whenever I wanted. For example, now I have to think about those things because the cloud has a limited number of reads and writes, and
So
a
you could,
limited number.
if you try to do a backup, I'm sorry, yeah, a backup. You try to do a backup, you could completely clog up the works, right? You could be hogging all of your bandwidth.
When you combine that with certain kinds of workloads in SQL Server in cloud storage, the bandwidth and resources you're using for your backup could be enough that it would disrupt your production workload. And so you have to think about that kind of stuff. And I never did. It wasn't necessary.
That's probably because, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you're on prem, there's a team of sysadmins and they have their own LAN or whatever set up. They have everything taken care of, and you just use the fake hard drives. Maybe the real.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there were times when I would still be looking into a performance issue, and you still want to look at, is there latency, or are the drives, are the files that support your databases experiencing latency? And there are certain queries that you can run to get that information. And so sometimes I would still see that, but I wasn't then also in charge of figuring out how to fix it. And now I am. And so that's different. That's a different part of my workflow.
Yeah, you didn't have to when you stand up. So you have 99 instances with databases on them, and you need to stand up a new database in one of them, or a new instance with that you can put databases on. Um, you didn't decide what storage to put it on. They're using the same storage that you were using elsewhere. But in the cloud, you have to make that decision, and that decision you can't just choose the Porsche, right? That might be too expensive for your workload. You have to take the 8 ball and say, what's my workload going to look like? What's going to look like in next month, right? Or 6 months, 1 year, and make really smart and really intelligent decisions on your storage now. It's an extra thing you have to think about.
Even network is different. It's another aspect of the workflow that's different. So different virtual machines in different cloud providers provide different levels of network throughput. And you can have blazing fast storage in the cloud even, but if your virtual machine doesn't support that kind of throughput because of the network that virtual machine offers, then you still have a problem. So that was an additional layer of realizing, I also have to think about what the virtual machine can support as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm hearing you talk about the network being a bottleneck. I'm hearing storage being a bottleneck. And then I'm also thinking about the fact that as a DBA, a lot of times, end users, whether the end users, the developers, right? In a way, the developers are end user. They're building and they need a database for their application to run. Or the end users are literally the end users, people trying to get their job done or buy tickets or something. When the service is slow, whether it's network or storage, they come to you, and the best you can do is, well, that's our limits based on storage. They think it's the database that's slow, but in the cloud, the bottleneck may be something very different.
Yeah, it might be something that the SQL Server is using. The interesting thing about the cloud, though, is if you discover that's the case, in some cases, you can actually make a change live and give yourself more resources. And so you can't really do that. Well, you can't do that when you're on-prem. Your storage is your storage. So there's a certain flexibility there that you have being in the cloud that you don't somewhere else. And there's additional costs. Obviously, if you increase your ability to handle more reads and writes, then your cloud provider is going to charge you for that. If you increase your throughput, your cloud provider is going to charge you for that.
Yeah, but you're paying. But I like how I like the word you used. I like that you said flexibility, because that's really a big benefit, isn't it? Where you could quickly, everyone defines it differently. Turn that dial. Someone might be very willing to pay that money when you turn that dial up in order to get the performance they need very quickly.
Right.
Flexibility.
And I have, on the flip side, though, discovered that I didn't have as much flexibility in some scenarios as I thought I might. Some changes that you make, you don't have to do anything to your virtual machine, for example. You can do it live, and it'll make an adjustment for you. Other changes, you can't do that. You have to turn the virtual machine off in order to then resize certain aspects of it. And so not everything is quickly interchangeable, but some things are, for sure.
Backup and restores. If you're already in the cloud, do you bring those backups on-prem, or do you continue to keep them in the cloud?
Or
is there a best practice? I mean, is it something that goes both ways?
Well, so you probably wouldn't bring them down to on-prem anywhere. You might, if you're keeping them in like long-term storage, which there are various kinds of long-term storage, and those storage options might cost different things for different kinds of storage. I'm not going to have the right words here again, because this is an area that I'd like to continue learning in, but you have different levels of storage where things are more readily available. So you might pay, I'm going to make up some numbers. You might pay $5 a month to store a gig of data, but you also can't access it very quickly. The next level, let me go this way. The next level, you might pay $10 a month. It's a little more accessible, but it's still not fast. And over here, you might pay, $15 a month for storage, but you can get to it quickly. That's probably, that is where you want to keep backups if you're going to do backups of databases, because you want to be able to get to that fast so that you can recover. And usually that just involves, you'll bring it down to another online storage location. It just happens to be a storage location that's local to your virtual machine. Okay. It'd be kind of like, I was thinking about this. So if I store it down the street at a restaurant nearby, that's kind of close, but it's a little more work to go down there and get it. If I'm storing it, across town, across the city, over in Illinois, which is, an hour-ish from where I'm sitting right now, I'm probably paying a lot less, but I also can't get to it very easily. So,
yeah, costing more because it's accessible is a thing. It's like when you're at the theme park, the sodas cost a lot more than they cost in a gas station, and the gas station costs more than they do in a Walmart. Do you have any other challenges that you've had to deal with the cloud that you just really didn't feel like you had to deal with when you're on-prem?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now.
You gotta be polite. You don't want to make the cloud database gods angry.
Right. Yeah, I have to go back to work tomorrow, so I don't want to.
Are there any major benefits? Anything you absolutely love about moving to the cloud? Like, what are some of the big wins that you really appreciate now that you're working in the cloud as a database professional, as opposed to when you're on-prem?
Okay. Well, I mean, I think certainly the flexibility, like we talked about earlier, you can dial up resources, get more resources quickly. You, in some cases, you can do that on-prem if you're virtualized, like on Hyper-V or VMware. But I think that the cloud allows you to scale, and certainly you can scale in the cloud. At least in theory, you can do it faster than you could on-prem. I think to some degree, though, it's because at least the places I've been that were functioning on-prem weren't into automation in the way that you kind of have to be in the cloud.
The cloud forces things to be automated in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you need to build 10 servers, if you're using something like infrastructure as code, you're using a program like Terraform in Visual Studio, and you set everything up, you can build 10 servers pretty quickly. That's more of a challenge when you're on-prem, and certainly it can be done. If you're a place who's still ordering physical hardware, then that's really slow. So you're not going to build 10 servers very quickly at all. You're going to be waiting on some provider to ship it to you. And, that's really kind of at least part of what helped develop the cloud in the first place. Is I think people were tired of the slow turnaround. When they needed a resource, they didn't want to wait on IT to order that and then configure it and plug it in and all that. So that's an advantage.
IT didn't want to wait for IT to order anymore.
That's right. Yeah. I think that's the big thing that comes to my mind, is just you can do things quicker and at scale in ways that I haven't been able to do in other roles. So.
Okay. Well, awesome. I appreciate you letting me bombard you with questions today. You're definitely learn some things that are cloud focused, and hey, maybe a year from now I'll ask you again, and we'll see if your opinions change on any of that, or if the situation changes. Right? I think using cloud services was different a year ago than it was now, and it's immensely different than it was 3 years ago than it is now, especially for database professionals. Right? I think the cloud started out.
It's always changing.
It's almost like it's moving down the stack, right? I feel like the front end first, and then the mid tier, and then the databases, right? Maybe that's why you're feeling some of that storage pain. All right.
Could be.
I appreciate everybody being a data engineer.
And Lee Markum, database administrator.
Database administrator extraordinaire. And good night, everybody.
Good night. Bye.